So Dad, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Peter Kennedy, and I was a member of the Parachute Regiment. I joined the Army in 1977 and served 25 years until 2002.
So fairly decent stint, and what made you join all those years ago?
I'd always wanted to be a soldier, and it was one of those things that I never thought I'd do, and then one day I just happened to be going past a recruiting office and I decided to go in. My hair was down to here, I had little round glasses, I was a student, and I was probably the most unlikely recruit you could have imagined, but they took me. I think it was desperation on their part.
And what role did you go into?
I was really attracted by the sound of the Parachute Regiment, and that's where I went. That's what I went for.
And so moving on to the Falklands War, so can you just explain a little bit, like what was it, why did it come about?
Yeah, so there'd been a dispute with Argentina for quite a number of years. Argentina had been a colony of Spain, and Spain, Britain and France throughout the 18th and 19th centuries had all claimed sovereignty of the Falkland Islands. But in about 1833, Britain settled there permanently, and it's been ours ever since. So in 1982, there was a military dictatorship in Argentina, and they were having a real problem with their economy, and they were having riots against them. There'd been a civil war raging for about 10 years. And as a distractor, they decided at very short notice in late March 1982 to invade the Falkland Islands. They went from being villains to the heroes of Argentina within days. So the Argentinians thought this was absolutely fantastic.
And what was the initial British response when this happened?
Shock, complete shock. But literally within 24 hours, the British government said that they would fight back. They'd launch a task force and that we would go down and we would take the Falklands back.
So pretty rapid turnaround then.
Very rapid response. So the invasion took place on Friday the 2nd of April, and literally on the Monday afternoon, a task force set sail.
And how much notice were you personally given to deploy?
Well, I was actually meant to be going to Belize on the Tuesday after the invasion, and I was posted to 2 Para on the Monday morning. And when I got there, I had to go for an interview with Colonel H. Jones, and he said, "How are you looking forward to Belize?" I said, "Well, I'm going tomorrow morning, I'm looking forward to it." And he said, "Well, we're not going, we're going to the Falklands instead." Literally 2 days later, the Commando Brigade and 3 Para set sail on the Canberra, a luxury liner. And about a week later, we were told we were going as well, but we weren't going on a luxury liner, we were going on a North Sea ferry, the Norland. So we were given about 3 weeks' notice to sail, and we finally sailed on the 26th of April.
And how was that experience? Like, how long were you actually on the ship for?
We were on the ship for just short of about a month, just over a month, and we went through an intensive training program, as you can imagine. So this was our big opportunity to get ourselves ready for combat, and we were convinced that this was going to be a very hard, bloody war. And we wanted to be as ready for it as possible. So just intensive training in all the skills, all the military skills that you can imagine, but particularly fitness. So we were marching with heavy kit around the boat, the ship, a lot of first aid training, and clearly weapon training as well.
Was there any threat while you were, transiting, like from submarines, that kind of thing?
Yeah, there was a really powerful submarine threat. So we had to practice submarine stations. And we had a number of drills on the way down where it'd say, exercise, exercise, submarine stations. Anyway, one day they said, submarine stations, this is not a drill, this is not a, oh my God, what's happening here? So we put our helmets on, life jackets on, got our bags, and we lay there for about an hour waiting for the impact. And then they finally said, "We've located the submarine, it's a whale." So we were fine.
Stand down.
Stand down.
Yeah, good. On a kind of day-to-day level, what were your living conditions like?
Pretty grim. The weather was, because it was approaching winter, and it started to rain. It rained most days. It was very windy, so you quite often get wet overnight, and then you'd dry out in the wind the next day. But as winter approached, it started to snow more often, and it got colder and colder and more miserable.
And did you find that the kit, obviously, we're talking a while ago, I imagine the kit and equipment was nowhere near what it is now?
We used to joke saying that the boots were made out of compressed cardboard because they just leaked. Nothing like these fancy boots that you've got nowadays. We were given really good Arctic weather equipment, clothing, but the waterproofs were basically nylon.
So you didn't have Gore-Tex?
No Gore-Tex. Gore-Tex had been invented at that point, and 1 or 2 people had gone out and bought their own. But you can't really go into combat in a bright blue Gore-Tex waterproof, can you? So we had to go in the stuff that we were given, which basically it kept the rain out, but you sweat so much you'd almost no point in wearing the waterproofs.
And so you're just kind of living outside, you're not really washing, I take it?
But yeah, we did. We washed
Okay.
and we shaved every day like good little soldiers.
Very professional.
Very professional. Polished our boots as well. A lot of soldiers got trench foot because we'd dig trenches because of the artillery threat, and then the trenches would fill with water, and at stand to, you had to hop into your trench.
Yeah.
But I remember we got to a place called Fitzroy, which is where the Galahad was eventually hit and sunk, which we witnessed. And we'd not had a bath or a shower for about 10 days, 2 weeks. And I went to one of the locals that I'd met earlier and said, "Oh, hi, we're looking around for the wash house." And he said, "There's no wash house here. What do you want a wash house?" Or, "Oh, we're just hoping to find somewhere to get a bath or a shower." "Oh," he said, "well, you can come to my house." And I thought, that's what the answer I wanted you to give me. And it was me and the Sergeant Major, and he said, "So yeah, come round tonight at 6 o'clock. I said, "Oh, what, just in time for dinner?" And he went, "Oh yeah, you could come for dinner as well." So it's like, fantastic. So I said, "Is it okay if we bring a third person with us as well?" Yeah, that's fine. So we went for this bath and dinner every night in the Falklands is lamb. That's all they eat, and it's all cooked on a peat fire. Anyway, so we took my boss, who was the company commander, so he got the first bath, and he'd been wounded at Goose Green, and he had a back full of holes. So he got in the bath, and then I was next. And when I went to get in, the lady of the house looked in the bath and she was horrified because it was just floating with scabs off the back of my company commander. She put a new bath in for the Sergeant Major, so I had the scabby bath.
Excellent. So you're the only person that lost out?
Yes, but we did have a very nice lamb supper, the first of several at Fitzroy, to these charming people.
So every other day, what kind of food were you eting? Was it like rations?
It was menu D most
Just
days.
every day?
Every day, menu
And what
D.
kind of food was that?
We actually had Arctic rations, so this was far better than the stuff we'd been having previously, which is all tinned stuff. So this was all dehydrated food, and you just had to, get some water, and there was plenty of water in the Falklands. Most of it was peaty, dark brown water, but you just put a couple of sterilisers in it and just pray for the best. And the food was fine, but it was pretty repetitive. So
Giving you the calories that you needed. And
yeah, as a special treat, once every 2 weeks we might get a menu B as an alternative.
Yeah, I've really noticed even the short time that I've been in the army, like, rations have come on a long way, so I can't imagine what they were like back in the 80s.
Yeah, pretty rough.
And did you have any, communication with back home? Obviously, you and Mum had got married in January that year. It's just a few months before you went away. How were you kind of communicating with her?
Well, there were no smartphones, no mobile phones, no landlines. It was basically a bluey, the little bluey envelope. And we were all very pleased that after a while we were told we didn't have to put a stamp on it, because none of us had stamps with us either. So the correspondence was, you'd write in your trench your little letter home, and you get one back. And the mail came through probably about every week. We'd get something back from back home.
And so you were able to kind of, communicate, but I imagine it was really delayed.
It was very delayed. So I'd be getting blueys from home talking about things that happened in, late April, and it was now mid-May. And so there was no conversation, it was just a series of, this is what I'm doing now, and I've just got your letter talking about the leak in the bath, and I've just been in a battle.
Must have grounded you a little bit.
It did, well, it was quite funny, but it was very, very nice to get letters from home. Very nice.
So moving on to Goose Green, which obviously was a really pivotal battle in the Falklands, and you had a really interesting involvement in that. Can you talk a little bit about what Goose Green was?
So this was a strip of land that was about 10 kilometres long and 2 kilometres wide. And there were a series of enemy positions all the way down it. So initially, Goose Green had been seen as a really important base because there was an airfield there, and they had Picara attack aircraft on it. And it was thought to be the strategic base for the Argentinians. The night we landed, the SAS did a diversionary raid on Goose Green to try and distract the garrison. And they had so little response, they told us that there was probably about a company's worth of enemy at Goose Green. So it was then seen as something that could be attacked fairly easily, a quick in and out job. And so 2 para were given this as a task to do.
And then what actually happened?
We moved down to a place called Camilla Creek House, which is a small farm hamlet. And we were preparing there the night before. And because there was a big push to Stanley from the rest of the commando brigade, and all the resources were going into that, we were given very few resources. So we had 3 guns from the artillery. We'd normally expect 6. We were told we could take 2 mortar base plates. We would normally have 8. And we weren't able to carry enough ammunition. We had no vehicles to take. So we were in light order. Literally the day before, we were tuned into the BBC radio, and the headline was, a British parachute battalion is stationed 5 kilometres north of Goose Green, about to launch an attack. So we were horrified that the enemy had been warned off, and the commanding officer, Colonel H. Jones, was not impressed.
I can imagine.
He was literally jumping up and down in horror at what had just been announced. So we knew now that the enemy were aware we were coming, so all chance of surprise was lost. We had recce patrols out looking across the peninsula, and straight after first light, our recce patrols started reporting back to us that they could see lots of enemy positions, and we could see down this slope, and it was like another billiard table. It went down for about 500-600 metres into a small inlet. There was a huge building which was the schoolhouse. So we were going to go down this slope, and we were going to go up the other hill and take the airfield. And it was altogether it was about 1,500 metres we had to cross over. Just as we were about to go through this gorse line, I said to Roger Jenner, the boss, I said, Roger, do you want to fix bayonets? And he went, yeah. So I called out, C Company, listen in, fix bayonets. And you might have done it on the drill square at Sandhurst or on a parade, but I tell you, when you do it for real, poof, it wakes you up. And we just set off down this hill, and it felt quite comical at first. Fixed bayonets, and I started whistling the theme tune from Dad's Army because it was so funny. And then pew, you started getting the ping of rounds going past, and everyone just dived down looking for somewhere to take cover, and there was just nowhere. It's just flat grass. So I had my head pressed against the ground. I remember looking at a blade of grass and thinking, I can't get any closer, and because the rim of the helmet just would not let me get further in. And I just remember the panic and horror at what was going on. I don't know how long it was, but eventually I thought, I'm meant to be one of the people in charge around here, and I should be doing something about it. And I'd spotted with my binos one of the anti-aircraft positions, and I could see the flashes as they were firing. So I got my map out and I worked out the grid, wrote the grid reference down. I took a bearing with my silver compass, and then I started calling over to the mortar fire controllers, anti-aircraft guns, and they didn't respond. So I got up and ran forward to them, and as I did that, all the guns seemed to be shooting at us. It's like a duel that lasted for about 10 minutes. They were just firing straight into us. Right next to the settlement of Goose Green, I suddenly saw a puff of smoke from behind this big sheep shed, followed by a crump, and I thought, that's the artillery, that's the guns. And I saw another puff, and I thought, I know exactly where it is. Got the grid, said to the FAC, right, we've got a grid of the 3 guns that have been firing. Here's a bearing, fire mission. So got onto the radio. Now, you're a gunner. The most exciting thing that can happen to a gunner is that you find the gun line of the enemy and then you bring in counter battery fire. So we thought, this is going to be a complete stonker. We're going to get everything going and we're going to take out this gun line. So we gave the grid, gave the bearing, and we got to wait out. And it seemed to go on forever, so we called again and said, what's happening to this fire mission onto the guns? And they said, we can't fire it, it's too close to the village. There's 114 civilians somewhere in the village, we don't know where they are, so if we open fire, we could hit the civilians. You've got to get the guns yourself. So I said to the 2 mortar fire controllers, you carry on bringing down fire missions, I'm going to try and take those guns out. So I got up and started running down the hill, and by now everyone was off the hill. And then I saw a shell hole, and I started running for this shell hole, and the tracer was then around me, completely around me, and there was then an explosion, and it was a mortar or an artillery round landed right next to me and just lifted him off my feet, and I flew through the air and landed in this hole, completely dazed, lying on my back and just looking over my head. I can just see all this tracer ripping over my head, and I thought, lost a leg or something, so I just started checking everywhere, and there wasn't a mark on me, but I was just covered in dust and muck, and there was no shrapnel. The blast had gone straight up and just knocked me off my feet. Then I checked myself over, and I had a grenade on my webbing here, which was fine. That was a HE grenade, and I had a white phosphorus grenade here, and it had bent right round on the arming pin and had almost sheared off. So I left it in the trench, then jumped out, and then I ran down to the bottom of the hill. And at the bottom of the hill, there was just complete chaos. There was a battle going on for this schoolhouse, intensive fire going on there. So I went to the right, and everyone was lying on the ground because there was just machine gun fire, seemed to be coming from all directions. So we just crawled up the Land Rover track. The track was basically 2 ruts, and we just got into one of the ruts and basically crawled. Got to the top of the hill. There was a big exploding ammunition bunker with shrapnel flying all over the place. Got to the top of the hill and discovered a napalm cache. There was just these big pods, and there must have been 30 or 40 of them just laid out, and they're all leaking all over the place. And then I thought, what if the civvies are in the huts, in the sheep sheds either side? We can't open fire, so we're going to have to get even closer. This sort of droning noise, and this plane came around the corner. It was a Picara, and it started flying up the hill towards us, and I recognised these 2 pods underneath it. It was napalm. So the aircraft was flying fairly slowly, but as it got closer and closer, I thought, what do we do? Do we open fire? And we had this big stash of napalm right behind us. I thought, if this goes off, the whole hill's going to disappear. So the plane got about 30 metres away, and I just waved at him. He didn't wave back, but he flew overhead. Literally 30 seconds later, he dropped the napalm on the bottom of the hill where D Company and C Company were. And I felt a bit bad about what I'd just done. Fortunately, the next day I asked, and nobody had been hit by the napalm. It was very close, but it just missed them. And then the airplane was shot down by somebody else. A Harrier came in and dropped a cluster bomb unit on the 2 remaining anti-aircraft guns about 10 minutes before last light. 2 of us went down to the village looking for the guns, and we were going to just throw grenades at them. It was absolutely pitch black, couldn't find the guns, so we came back, went 100 metres, got to the Argentine flag, cut it down, went back up the hill where we'd whistled Dad's Army. It's now freezing cold, it started to snow, it's pitch black, you could hardly see your hand in front of your face, so we tucked into the gorse bush and we slept. The next morning we got up just at first light, and we saw all these soldiers, and we thought, are they ours or are they the enemy? And it turned out it was A Company. And found C Company a few minutes later. I was rejoined the company. My company commander had been wounded, so I was told I was now the company commander and that I was going to lead the final attack. And so we started putting a plan together, got out our combat estimate, and then word came in that the enemy had surrendered. And what had happened is Major Chris Keeble, who was the battalion second in command, persuaded the Argentinians that we outnumbered them 3-1 and that they should surrender with honour, so they did. We started going down the hill towards Goose Green, and there were literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Argentinian prisoners came out, and in the end there were 1,100 of them to our 550. So normally when you attack a position, you're meant to have 3-1 superiority. We had 2-1 against us, so it was a very well fought battle, and we were extremely lucky to win it.
When the Argentinians surrendered, what was the kind of information like back home? How was that communicated?
I saw a film clip of the news recently announcing, it was a news flash, and they said 2 para has just attacked Goose Green. British casualties were light. There were also a number of enemy casualties. Next of kin will be informed. And it was quite shocking to see that, thinking that family, friends could have seen that. Whereas nowadays, if you see a film clip like that, it will say there are casualties, next of kin have been informed.
And so mum would have been sat at home watching that and almost waiting to find out potentially if you've been injured or worse.
And whether to dig out the insurance policies or not.
And when you actually arrived home, what was the reception like?
So we were first back. It was quite funny. We were first ashore, first into battle, first into Stanley, and first home. So the number of firsts for 2 para. So we went on the ship back on the Norland again, and we sailed back up with 3 para. So that was a very interesting voyage. We sailed to Ascension Island, and then we flew back from Ascension Island to RAF Bryson Alton, where the families met us. So that was really good. Everyone was just amazed at what we'd done, the task force. 2 para seemed to be the most famous battalion in the world. Everyone was like, wow, this is, what 2 para did was just amazing. So it's very positive, and I think there was huge support from the public. Very few people were against the war. They saw it as a just war, so the public, the support from the public was fantastic.